Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for The Bad Batch Season 2 Episode 10. So, another sort of one-off episode. This one at least had the sense that it was set up from where the last episode left off and wasn't completely one-off on its own. But I will say that other than, just the, get the ship back thing, the connection between the episodes I didn't think was particularly amazing in that I'd never really call this a two-parter as such, because I think there's such a minor connection between the two episodes. It's more of just a continuation rather than a full-on two-parter. But I felt like this was very on par with a lot of the other sort of Bad Batch Mission of the Week style episodes, where we're not really doing anything with the main plot. We're not really doing anything with any of the characters. It's just sort of a mission that makes sense to do on this planet. But I've noticed some people with this one are kind of saying this is sort of the breaking point in a way for them. That this is, for them, the moment that this show has sort of revealed that it doesn't seem to have that much ambition to do anything with the plot or the characters. This is the one for so many people. It seems like they're now going down the, more filler. Are we ever going to have a main plot here? Whereas I've been more thinking this way about the series since pretty much episode 4 and 5 especially. What are we actually doing here? And I think, it obviously highlights that I don't understand at this point why this show has 16 episodes a season. Why this is the multi-season show focused on the Bad Batch, with most of the episodes just being these sort of one-off episodes that while acceptable episodes, are ultimately not particularly needed in terms of something that resembles a clear-cut plot or through line through the episodes. And especially when you have other shows like Tales of the Jedi having smaller runtime per episode and a really small episode count per season, and everyone desperate for more episodes of that. To see the Bad Batch almost coming across it's wasting a lot of animation time and stuff like that on episodes that just really aren't particularly important, and to in a way make the case for here's why this episode's super important. It feels like you're very much stretching to make that episode kind of feel more important than it actually is. I can easily see a situation where the Bad Batch works as 10 episode seasons, and you have your sort of core 6-7 episodes that make up the plot, and you maybe have room for say 3 random one-off episodes just to have a little bit more time with the characters. I think if you make it 2 limited run episodes, you run the risk of the other side of things and just it's too short. But the fact that it's 16, and it's becoming very clear as we get towards the end of the season that this is something that's going to continue throughout the entire run of this show. It's not just that we happen to have, runs of episodes where there's only maybe one notable episode. This just seems to be consistently what this show actually is. That half of the season, you can absolutely watch the show without having watched this episode. As such, and especially when the main argument about, no, here's why you need to watch this episode, is just this really vague, broad sense of a plot that we're building up to some sort of a Sid betrayal, because that's a plot point that we're all super interested in as fans of this show. I'm just ready for them to leave Sid. I really don't feel any sort of connection to Sid, at least right now. And they would have to do something pretty impressive with whatever episode they decide to do that with to actually make me care more about that. I want to now see the Bad Batch make their decision. This is one thing that maybe has been subtly set up in a few more episodes throughout this. And I think the fact that Echo basically has already on his own made this decision by sticking around with Rex. He wants to be involved in the more important stuff. He'd be perfectly fine, if they maybe didn't encounter Rex, just going along with the Bad Batch. But you can tell Echo wants to fight against the Empire and do more direct stuff against them. And so I think like Hunter has kind of seen this a little bit, and in Hunter there's a slight sense that that is his arc. As the leader of the group, he basically is the one to decide for them. Are they just out here trying to make some sort of a life for Omega and protect her? Or do they actually want to get involved in the bigger picture stuff and try and make a change? You know, help people go against the Empire on a more regular basis. And I think what's holding him back is the sense that he doesn't want to sort of force Omega into this kind of war, basically. Even though she, even at this point, I think would be up for that. So the one thing with this episode that I actually felt was sort of interesting was when they made the kind of comparison of what's going on here with the way Mako is running his sort of mining operation here with all these kind of teens and kids that he has full control over, is that this is a smaller scale version of the Empire. And what does the Bad Batch do in this episode? They actually come in here for a reason, and that's to get their ship back. And initially that's what all they want to do. They just want to get the ship and get out of there without really helping anyone. But they end up actually taking down his organization and shifting the dynamic here, where the kids are still going to do this because this is what they know. They can make a life for themselves here because they basically ran the business themselves. Now the guy on top is gone. They can do what they want with the profits. And they the Bad Batch seem to like that they accomplished this. So the idea, again, I think is being brought up. When will they finally make this decision? Now, what I will say as a criticism of this general arc, which I like the idea of, is that I don't think they're doing enough to properly, fully place it in your mind that this is the direction with them as a group. I think there's been little teases and hints of it, but the fact is, none of the characters are talking to each other about this for any length of time. It just like occasionally gets sort of brought up and they move past it. And this is a lot of what has happened here, is that I'm not sure we're necessarily characterizing the group as just there's a severe lack of communication between all characters. It does feel like this is a show that for some reason just is not particularly confident in its main characters being characters as such, because the weakness with this episode again is that in the grand scheme of things, apart from them getting their ship back, it wasn't an important episode for the plot. Wrecker didn't have any sense of like true character development in this episode. Hunter didn't. Tech didn't. Omega was a little bit more involved in the episode because she was kind of hanging out with Benny for a lot of the episode. But apart from a minor sort of like betrayal, her, you know, really putting herself on the line kind of for them situation, that's all that we're getting with her. It's just the episodes typically are just using the absolute bare minimum base level of what this character is as a character to, you know, go off. That's what made the last episode feel a little bit more kind of stand out as an episode. It was that they actually did a little bit of a deep dive into Tech. And even though it was sort of a basic kind of deep dive for what type of character he is, it was at least them doing something and not just having it be Tech in the background, like hacking or doing his tech stuff to help the Bad Batch win the day. You know, it's not just Wrecker using his strength to help the group win. That sort of a thing. Where is the characterization coming from with all of this? And the lesson at the end of this is sort of the idea that, well, the Empire is the overall enemy, but there are individuals and smaller groups of people out there that are kind of just as bad, just sort of on a smaller scale. And Tech pointing out that, but there are also groups of us out there as well. And it's basically the idea of, hey, we're effectively a rebel group without being officially aligned as a rebel group. But when are they going to make that sort of the plot? When are they actually going to bring that to the surface? And this is where the real problem with this show is that we have to fundamentally accept that because the show is called The Bad Batch, that the Bad Batch have to be in focus. But I said this at the end of last season, and my main hope with this season was that I hope I'm not at the end of this season again saying that this show is fine, but it shouldn't be called The Bad Batch. Like, I think they almost need to reverse the dynamic with this show, where like this needs to be the sort of end of the Clone Wars, end of the clones kind of show that occasionally involves the Bad Batch, rather than the Bad Batch that occasionally covers the end of the clones plot. Because right now, I don't really see what the overall goal of the Bad Batch necessarily is, other than I guess they'll join up with a rebel cell at some point and be more directly involved in the action. Beyond that, I think we're still waiting for some sort of a bigger reveal with Omega and what's really going on with her. But they've not teased much about that stuff this season. And that's why it has felt that overall, so far 10 episodes, 10 out of 16 episodes into the season, it's felt that apart from episode 3 and then the 2-part kind of mid-season big arc where Rex sort of came back and that we had the whole conspiracy plot, apart from like those 3 episodes, the show has kind of like regressed a little bit. That we've had to go down from where we were in season 1 to kind of build back up to just about roughly the same level. And I think it's really telling that the Bad Batch themselves have not really been involved in the episodes that are the ones that are like considered to be the best. And even though they're involved in the episode 8 stuff, the second episode of the 2-parter, it's still just them doing the typical Bad Batch stuff, with the decision for Echo to leave being the more significant kind of plot thread for them rather than anything. And even then, that presents the other issue of like, I'd almost prefer that the trajectory of the season be following Rex and Echo and what they're doing rather than what the Bad Batch are doing. Because like I said earlier, if what we're building up to is some sort of a weird betrayal plot with Sid, I'm not sure how much I particularly care about that based on how the setup has been. I'm more desperate as a fan of this show for them to just get out of this kind of structure so we can actually go somewhere with this series. And so just getting out of from working for Sid is the best thing that this show can possibly do for them. Otherwise, like, I think any other plot point is kind of what I want the focus to be more on. I want to see more Crosshairs. I want to see more of the aftermath to like what happened to Rampart and, you know, what's going on within the Empire and how they're going to treat the clones from this point on. After what happened in that 2-parter. I want to see what Rex and Echo are doing. Borderline, like a lot of the individual episodes that we left, I'm more interested in sticking around with the characters there than I am in following the Bad Batch if this is all that we are going to be doing. And I don't want to be too dramatic about this because, like, fundamentally, again, I enjoyed this episode. It was fine. I didn't think that this was the episode that was the kind of straw that broke the camel's back type situation. I think this episode was very on par with other types of these episodes, and in fact I probably liked it a decent bit better than some of those episodes, because at least, like, say with the character of like Benny and what was going on there, you had an emotional connection with what was going on here because you cared about how the kids were being treated, and you were waiting to see, like, we're not just going to leave them here like this. And so the resolution being they've taken the sort of like the process into their own hands and are going to sort of do their best to thrive here. And that was actually like a nice kind of emotional ending for characters who we just literally just met. And at the very least, there was a little tease at the end where Benny's kind of like, if you ever need a thief, you know who to call. So I'm kind of wondering, like, that seems like a clear setup for, like, we're going to use him at some point. So what's going on? But beyond that, you know, like, look, Mako in this episode was very kind of characterized as just the villain, you know, just kind of gluttony, keeping all the food to himself, very over the top way in which he controls them through food. Like borderline probably like overdone in the villainy department, that like he gives the top earner a bowl of food and then it's one bowl of food for the entire rest of the crew. I don't think you needed to go that far to show it, and it made it such an extreme that it was a bit over the top. But for this episode, one shot, you know, you did what you had to do overall. Beyond that, you know, a pretty intense moment, like Omega gets captured. You had the trust fall moment, I think, with her and Hunter was actually kind of a nice enough. Just like Omega willing to put herself in such a dangerous situation and basically pull that droid off the ledge over like a magma pit type thing, and have complete confidence that Hunter would grab her swinging on the rope. You know, not too much action in this one, but you know, that was like nice enough just to show a little bit like camaraderie between the group. But yeah, they get the ship back, you know, again, they once again emphasize the idea. It's their home, and they have it back, and we move on to whatever we're doing next. So what, we've got 11, 12, 13, yeah, what, 6 episodes left before the end of the season. But what's interesting, The Mandalorian is starting next week. So this is kind of crazy that they're leaving quite a bit of overlap here, which they don't usually tend to do because, you know, they're fine having the Bad Batch be one of their main things on for Star Wars at this point. Is there a need to have such a big overlap? I'm not really sure I get that. Now, the way you would solve this is that they were never, I think, going to move the Mandalorian to make space for the Bad Batch to finish. But I'm surprised I didn't try and start the Bad Batch maybe a little bit earlier, or maybe do a few more double up episodes on the Bad Batch so that we finish or are much closer to being finished as the Mandalorian starts. I get maybe having like 1 or 2 episodes of overlap, but we're going to have like 6. Like most of the Mandalorian is going to be, I suppose, overlapping with the Bad Batch. And obviously, like for me covering this when like Star Wars is not the main focus on my channel, it makes it really like, oh god, am I going to have to do 2 videos for Star Wars a week, like just separate reviews? Do I do them both in one video? What way do I do this? Because I think I'm going to have to focus on The Mandalorian, just because it's much more important Star Wars content, and most of the Bad Batch is episodes like this, and I don't think we're expecting probably to get into bigger stuff until maybe the final 3 episodes. So I'll see how I'll schedule that sort of stuff, because I don't want to just drop reviewing the Bad Batch, because I've done it this far and I want to see how the season ends, because I've been enjoying doing these discussions. But The Mandalorian, it's season 3, like we've waited a while for this, so you know, that will have to get some focus there. So I think probably it's just going to have to be, yeah, I think they do air on different days at the very least, so that will factor in. So yeah, beyond that, they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.